So now on North Derbyshire Radio, we have Pat and Greg, Hue and Cry, to tell us about a fantastic year, a busy year, very busy year. Hello to both of you.
Hello, Chris.
Hi,
Hi,
Pat, as
everyone.
well. Hi, how you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Now, let's start with the first Hue and Cry song I heard was Ordinary Angel. It was from Now 13 when I was 7 because I saved up the pocket money for it. But we're going back earlier than that for what we're talking about today. We're talking about Labours of Love. Greg, tell us a little bit more about how it came about and what's in store.
Well, our manager and business partner is very good at saying, do you know what? Every now and again, we did it with, I remember he said to us when it was Sinatra's, was his 100th, but would have been 100th birthday, so that you guys should do a Sinatra record. So we made a Sinatra record with our minds on other things. So we'd recorded this electro record for the last 3 years and we were getting ready to kind of finish it, mix it. And the manager went, do you know what? It's your 40th anniversary next year. I went, we should celebrate it. So we had long discussions about what to do. And one of the meetings, I said, I've got boxes and boxes of tapes and newspaper clippings and photographs. And I've kind of been looking at them going, what am I going to do with these things? And then during lockdown, I bought a cassette player from eBay. So if you ever tried to buy a cassette player, they're not cheap, like 500 or 600 quid for a decent cassette player nowadays.
Wow.
And it arrived, I plugged it in. I thought, right, I'll open this box. I opened the box, put my hand in, and the first cassette I pulled out said Wembley, Thursday. I thought, Wembley, Thursday. Surely that's not a cassette of Pat and I playing at Wembley Stadium with Madonna on Thursday, a Thursday in the middle of August, 1987. Stuck it in the cassette deck, and that's what it was.
No.
And it was, what an incredible performance, 60,000 people. And after a bit of research, I realized that that day, Pat and I were number 6 in the charts. And 2 days before that, we'd filmed a Top of the Pops performance to celebrate being number 6 in the charts. How weird was that? So that spurred me on to keep going. So that's when it started. And I ended up finding, the first thing I found was a demo tape from 1982, which was 5 years previous to that, and a band Pat and I were in called The Winning Losers. And it gave me an idea to chronologically list all these things and back it up with either recordings or photographs or newspaper clippings. So wind forward 18 months, I've chronologically listed the last 40 years of Pat and I's career with these assets. And when I at that meeting, the person that works for us in the office, Emma, she said, have we got enough material, Greg, to do a 4-track EP every month for the whole month of 2024? I said, Emma, I've got enough material to do an album every month in 2024. She said, no, that's too much. That's too much. We'll just do 4 tracks. So that's how it started. So every month in 2024, there'll be a 4-track EP of unreleased material from Hue and Cry. So by the end of the year, there'll be 48 tracks unreleased. But the other 150 that I found, I'm going to put them on a Patreon site, patreon.com/Hue and Cry. And if people want to dig deeper and hear it all, it's all going to be there.
That is a really good idea. I mean, what I'm looking forward to as well is the YouTube series that you've been busy working on, because every month, so the second Friday of the month, we're going to get the new EP, and then the fourth Friday of the month, I think it's this new YouTube feature that accompanies the songs, and that's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, because we need to, all this content requires quite a lot of context. And because Gregory's done it chronologically, people are going to be able to sort of measure, where was I in 86? Where was I in 96? Where was I in 2006? So we're hoping that it's going to kind of trigger quite a lot of, well, gig memories. So we're encouraging people to send in their own pics and their memorabilia and their ticket stubs and all the rest of it. But we also want people to kind of, as it were, it's like the iceberg metaphor is a good metaphor. You know, the 1/8 of the songs that make it onto the major albums is one thing, but the 7/8 of an experimentation and prototyping and blind alleys and things that sometimes things that I haven't heard for 35, 40 years. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. That's the DNA of Hue and Cry working itself through all these different decades right up to the present. So we're hoping, so it's a wee bit of Hue and Cry world, Hue and Crytopia for certain kind of fans, but we hope it's also going to be a kind of demonstration of the creative process over 4 decades. You know, the kind of the ways that you kind of just splurge around, or that you test out things, and you know, some of them make it, some of them don't. Maybe the choice was the right choice, the wrong choice. But we're kind of doing a big X-ray on what it is to make 40 years of music and songs and videos and everything else. So we'll contextualize that every month on a YouTube short, but fact-packed YouTube interview from me and Gregory. So yeah, it's definitely, if you want to go in the Hue and Cry universe, this is your option. This is your option.
Oh, year as well. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
Greg, back to you. I mean, obviously we start back in 1984, 1985 with the first demos we hear. So can you remember where they were recorded? Do you remember where they were? Is it, you know, was it just one location perhaps?
So in 1984, we'd just come off the back of the kind of postcard records in Glasgow. And Simple Minds had already hit then. Lloyd Cole and the Commotions were popular. Orange Juice were popular.
Yeah,
the Bluebells had Young at Heart. So there was lots of recording studio options in Glasgow. But the one that we went to was called Berkeley Street, and it's a street that's behind the Mitchell Library, which is one of the most beautiful reference libraries in the world, actually. It's in Glasgow. And we went there, and the guy that ran the studio, the engineer, he recorded those demos for us. And then Pat and I used to save up money from our grants for going to university, or I had a paper round, I guess, or we'd borrow money from our parents to do these demos. And one time we went in, and Pat and I were ready to hand over our 50 quid each. And Alan said, "You don't have to give me the money if you let me manage you." So Pat and I went home with our 50 quid still in our pockets. We mentioned it to our father, and he said, "You didn't sign anything, did you?" He said, "No, we didn't sign anything." He's like, "Right, good. Still get your money." Still get the money. And Alan managed us then for the next 6-7 years, and we still never signed a management contract with him. And he looked after us very well.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Pat, back to you, if I may. I mean, the 4 demos that we get on the first EP that's already out now. We've got Close the Door. That's probably my favorite, I'd say, out of the 4. But what would be your favorite from the first EP that's already out there?
Yeah, they were playing Close the Door on BBC Radio Scotland earlier on today. And it's got everything that is Hue and Cry in embryo, you know. So there's the angst-ridden lyrics, there's the kind of jazz meets soul arrangement,
Yeah.
the kind of big passionate performance. So it's interesting, when I listen to Close the Door, I think I remember all the stew of influences that was feeding into our mind at that time. So it was Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, it was The Jam, you know, it was Gang of Four, it was Certain Ratio, it was to some degree, you know, Paul Weller and the Style Council. And I hear it all there. And it's one of these things where we do it. It's a beautiful arrangement from Gregory, beautiful performance, but you don't know what you don't know. And it's that kind of we're just trying things out that make us feel good. And that's the key to having a music career that goes on for 40 years, is to keep trying to do things that make you feel that you're enjoying yourself first and foremost, and then maybe the audience will and do it. So I can hear all that energy in those early tracks. And so Close the Door, I think, is I think it's quite a revelation when people hear it, because they go, "I've never heard that before. That's obviously Hue and Cry," you know.
And Greg, we get an early version of I Refuse as well, which we'd hear 2 years later on Seduced and Abandoned. But the remastering on all the 4 tracks, absolutely amazing. I mean, from whatever devices they were recorded on, absolutely sounds fantastic.
Yes, I've been getting a lot of plaudits over the last couple of days from people saying, "How on earth did you do this?" And I was inspired by, well, it was Pat that kind of pointed me in direction. He watched the Beatles documentary that who was the director, Pat, the Australian
Peter
guy?
Jackson, Get Back.
Peter Jackson's Beatles documentary. And then also he pointed me to the BBC's Rolling Stones, where they did a documentary on each member of the Rolling Stones. And the kind of restoration of the archiving in these things is incredible. Now, I knew all about all this, and I thought, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder how difficult this is going to be. So I studied a lot of forums, a lot of tutorial videos, and Hue and Cry spent quite a bit of money on the software. I had to convince our business partner Doogie and my brother to say, "Look, we need to spend this money if we want to realize this." And then once I started doing it, I knew some of these cassettes were lying around, but I knew they were in a state that you couldn't really let anybody hear. I could listen to them half a bottle of wine on a Friday night, but you couldn't really put them out. You can now. So I started restoring all this stuff, and I knew it sounded good, but you don't know until it's kind of out there in the ether. And then the feedback I'm getting is, how did you do this? And I'm getting some musicians contacting me now saying, can you do this for me? I'm like, no, I've done this. I mean, I've mastered and restored over 200 pieces of music that span 40 years. I mean, it sounds a lot, 200, but it's only five. What's that? 5 tracks every year, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's been a labor of love. It has been, and I had to put myself in a mental state when I do it, because it's like looking at old photographs. Anybody looking at old family photographs, you end up with these dreams and these recollections that really screw you up. You start thinking about regrets. There's lots of regrets. You think, oh, maybe I should have done that. In fact, the other day I was in the van with Pat going to a gig, and I apologized to him because I should have maybe produced the third album a bit differently, because maybe it would have been more successful now that I reflect on the demos and all the stuff that I've restored. He's like, no, Greg, you made the album the way you made it, because if it wasn't for that album, I wouldn't have met my life partner. So it's fine. I went, oh, right, okay. I said,
Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
I know. So I have to put myself in some kind of weird mental self-hypnosis when I do this, and I don't listen to it as hue and cry. I listen to it as a sonic problem that I have to solve. So that's the state of my head. I listen to Hue and Cry old records.
That must take some doing. Pat, Greg touched on finding the Wembley cassette earlier on, but without giving too much away from what releases we're going to get over 2024, is there a song that you've heard that you thought, wow, the Hue and Cry fans are going to be excited about hearing this? You don't have to say what it is, but which is there something that you've discovered perhaps that you'd forgot about?
Well, the thing I've been saying is that one of the things the archive will reveal is the hidden complete Hue and Cry album that never was released, because the record company, after Remote, we were like we're in our full pomp. I mean, we were totally up for ourselves, and so we wrote this album, and was it 10 tracks, Gregory? Get the full complement, and the record company said, nah, 14, which you would select 10 or 12 from. And the record company said, no, we don't like it. And then we said, okay. And then we wrote another one, and that was Stars Crash Down.
Yeah.
So one thing there is youthful creativity. So yeah, we'll just write another set of 12 songs that will satisfy you. And for some reason they did. But this is a great record. And there's songs on it. There's like a song on it called Century Girl, right? Which is just as funky as it gets. And there's also a song on it called Do You Live in London, which is I think is the poppiest thing we've ever written in our lives. But unfortunately, the lyric is about how terrible it is to live in London. There's stuff floating in your tea. People are always pushing you all in the tube. And I think it just noised up our men, who are all the London dudes of the highest order. But musically and lyrically, it's absolutely top drawer, I think. So I think that's out of all of it. I mean, there's some brilliant bands that we had put together over the years, because we went in jazz directions in the mid to late 90s, and so we got access to all these incredible. So there are incredible live tracks to come along, playing songs that you have heard and that you haven't heard. But for sheer mind-boggling creativity, I would say that the hidden Hue and Cry, not released third album will be something to hear, and you'll hear it all on Patreon, and you'll hear some of it on the EPs on Spotify and Facebook. Yeah, it's quite a trip.
That is fantastic. Greg, if I may just ask you as well, because as well as accompanying this series of unreleased material, you've got a massive tour. I don't know if you've got a massive tour to look forward to.
Yes. That meeting I was telling you about, where we come up with this idea of the 4-track EP every month. It was supposed to be a meeting about the tour we're going to do in October, November 2024. So we launched the tour just before Christmas, and I had a wee look at the ticket sales, and I think for the whole thing, there's only a couple of hundred left over about, I don't know, 14, 16 gigs. So Birmingham sold out, Glasgow sold out, Gateshead sold out. Everywhere else has got. You look at these wee dots in Ticketmaster. There's one dot at the end of a row of seats where you can buy that seat. So there's no two dots together. So unfortunately, you can't say it's sold out because there's one seat left, and nobody's going to buy the seat because they need to come on their own. So there's probably somebody sitting looking at it going, I could probably just go on my own, couldn't I? I could go on my own. But it sold really well, and we're so chuffed. What a reaction from the Hue and Cry fans to come and see it. So we were asked in a few interviews this morning, is there any special things you're going to do for it? And kind of put us on the spot because it's so far into the future. So this will be at the end of this huge journey of all the archive material being released. I think we'll make our decisions closer to the time, brother, because we'll have been through so much about what we're going to do. I would love to play Here Comes Everybody, which was our first single release, big stomping Latin track. I'd love to do it with the band. That would be quite fun.
That'd be fun.
And I'd love to play Dangerous Wreck. I mean, Dangerous Wreck is a beautiful. I've forgotten how beautiful that song was until I hear it in the documentary. The first documentary episode is released this Friday, and when it appears in that documentary, that's so beautiful. I mean,
it's a great song. I mean, hearing the demo of that, I mean, obviously you played it in lockdown as well, but to hear the original demo, it is a lovely song, like you say.
So we've got decisions to make. So we'll see where we end up.
I mean, but there will be a spangly staircase with me coming down it with fruit on my head. I mean, that is a given. That is a given. You know, but apart from that, we haven't really decided anything. But that will be a feature of the whole thing. Yeah.
Well, there are tickets, like you say, at selected venues still available. And the main thing is to check out Hue and Cry Music on all your usual providers, Spotify, YouTube. We're going to hear a song on North Derbyshire Radio now. But thank you, Pat and Greg, for joining us. Really appreciated, and all the best with this massive year.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
So, thanks to Hue and Cry there. Close the Door in particular, the first track that you play off this Beginnings EP, is just an absolutely brilliant time capsule. You press play and you're there, back in the 80s, and it just sounds still as fresh as when it was made. Yes, it's a tape recording or whatever device it's been captured on, but it doesn't matter. It's an absolutely brilliant time capsule, a time machine, in fact, that just transports you back. You're there in the 80s, and it just leaves you wanting more, really, which is what we're going to get. So it's just a brilliant discovery and great to hear after all. And you're like, this is amazing. It really is amazing. How can it not have been heard in 40 years? But there you go. But they all stand out for completely different reasons. And you know, they're all absolutely top quality.